Welcome to the REI Diamonds Show with Dan Breslin, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom.
Welcome to the REI Diamond Show. I'm your host, Dan Breslin, and this is episode 170 on raising capital for real estate deals using authority marketing with Lyndsay Phillips. If you're into real estate investing and building wealth, congratulations, you are in the right place. My role here on the REI Diamond Show is to invite guests who specialize in building wealth, such as real estate investors and other industry service providers, and draw out the jewels of wisdom, those tactics, mindsets, and methods used to create millions of dollars and more in the business of real estate. So on today's episode, Lyndsay and I are going to peel back the curtain on my own personal strategy for the REI Diamond Show that you're now listening to. You've heard me say that I've made millions of dollars as a result of hosting this show since 2015, and that's the truth. Most of the impact has come through very esoteric sources, usually in the form of one-off ideas or mindset shifts that I've had personally as a result of the in-depth conversations with very interesting guests. But beyond that, I actually have had 4 specific reasons for hosting the show, which I'm going to share today. Now, I'm sure you'd agree that raising money for real estate deals is substantially easier when you are viewed as an authority and expert by those investors who give you said money. And today's guest, Lyndsay Phillips, specializes in developing that authority and expert positioning using content marketing through her 3 businesses: Smooth Sailing Business Growth, Smooth Business Podcasting, and Real Estate Investors Marketing. And whether you have absolutely no online presence at all, or you're already an expert with a strong published online presence, you're in for a treat. So grab a pen, grab a pad, grab a seat, and let's get right to it, shall we? All right, welcome to the REI Diamond Show. Lyndsay Phillips, how you doing today?
I am awesome. How's it going over there?
I am also awesome. We were just talking about how it's kind of the end of the day, and we're looking forward to wrapping it up with this fantastic episode, and I'm excited to get started here.
Awesome. Good way to end the day.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some things that a lot of the real estate topics we touch on over the years on the show, on the REI Diamond Show. We talk a lot about, strategies, how to do the real estate deals. We talk about negotiation techniques. But one of the things that helps define and drive my success and my ability to consistently generate deals is lead flow and marketing and thinking about internet presence and what my content is saying about me online. And I'm excited to have you on the show because we're going to touch on some of that, like kind of behind the scenes, behind the curtains mindset to what it takes for real estate investors. Single family real estate investors rely on deal flow. You rely on lead flow to consistently find the next deal, 2, 3, 5, 10, however many deals it is. And so that small piece of framework there to lead into, why don't you talk about how your business fits in there and just a little Reader's Digest version as to how you got there today.
You betcha. And I love how you said how your content and what you're putting out there represents and what it says about you, because that is super important. Same with the level of consistency that you are putting out, new content, blogs, whether it's podcasts or videos or social media. That so much plays into how people perceive you and the level of trust that they have with you. And as you know, especially within real estate investing and deals, trust is everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, a little bit about what we do. I used to be in the VA sphere, so virtual assistants, and I just found that I was kind of getting more and more into content marketing and just loved the creativity of it. I love the psychology behind it, about trying to like attract your perfect, avatar, prospect, partner, whatever you want to call them. And we're just having great success with my clients. And so I decided to cut out all the admin VA stuff and focus on content marketing. And my company just, blew up basically and got crazy busy. I've got a team of about, I think there's 11 of us now. And then we got more into podcasting. So I guess I have a few businesses: content marketing agency, podcasting agency, and then also real estate investor marketing agency. And as I was working with a number of real estate investors, I just seemed to attract more and really found that they struggled with marketing, kind of like not knowing where to start, right? Because with content marketing, there's so many moving pieces. Things are constantly changing, especially with social media. So you can kind of feel stuck, like which way should I go? What should I do? What's going to bring me the best ROI? And even just like figuring out the tech part of it and just like having the time to do it all, and you want to do it right. So just really felt like that was a hole that was in the industry that I love to fulfill.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So like let's touch on podcasting. So I'm here live. We're doing a podcast. I've done it for 4 or 5 years now, somewhat consistently. There's a lot of times where 2-3 weeks in a row I can't publish. I'm busy closing deals. We're up to 219 deals for the year. Nice. So it's like for me, one of the things when I was checking out your website talked about kind of like, what's the purpose? What is the, strategy? Why am I doing the podcast? And like a few of the things and the reasons that I do it, just to be completely transparent to the audience and to fill in, the context here. Like first and foremost, it's a value add for my buyers. And so when I sell properties, we obviously email a deal out to, maybe at a wholesale price. And, we want people to open those emails. And so on Saturdays, you have the packaging of my deal inventory with the podcast episode of that week. And so we've been able to share with our audience of fix and flip and real estate agents and buy and hold. And there's a variety of other people who also tune in and listen, maybe lenders, things like that. But we've tried to craft and tailor some of the topics. Some of the topics, obviously, the how to do deals part, but some of them are how to do things and create content, like with the strategy of here's how you go get the money for the deals. Here's how you raise private money. This is what the conversation looks like. And some of that is intentional because, like, if the buyer on my list has access to more capital, he might be able to buy another deal or two, and maybe not for me, maybe does it elsewhere. But the value add is number one. And number two for us has been people, right? New partnerships. There's, several people throughout my organization who came through the podcast, found it, listened to the podcast first, and they got to know who we were. They got to hear about our business before they ever raised their hand and said, yeah, Dan, I would check that out and I would look for that. And they've been some of our most productive, quick to hit the ground running partners throughout the company, and they've been with us for years. And then the third reason, and this is probably the least valuable reason so far, I guess, or the least significant for our business and moving the bottom line, is the deal flow. So like we bought a few deals through people who are listening to the podcast. I honestly thought, Lyndsay, that was going to be like a much more abundant place where deals came from, and I was surprised that actually wasn't the case. And then the fourth one is kind of a little bit of a bonus that sort of came about years after we put the podcast together, was we have a lot of people who participate passively in our deals. They fund our deals. They've met us 100% strictly through the podcast. In fact, some of the people I've talked to on the phone never met in person, and they are wiring money in to fund our deals, and we do the note, the mortgage, the whole thing. But this network of private money lenders who trusts us, me specifically, and the company, Diamond Equity, enough to wire the money in to fund our fix and flip deals based on the things we talk about on the show. That's how they've gotten to know me, and that's like the trust that they've, built up to know that I'm going to be here tomorrow and I'm going to pay them back their money with the interest no matter how the deal goes. And so those are kind of the four strategies for podcasts, and I noticed that on your website, and I thought them all through and wrote that down before we got on to the show here today. But aside from that, would you have any other, tips or strategies how maybe a real estate investor could leverage podcasting, whether their own or whether it was through getting booked on other podcast shows for them to kind of grow their business, maybe if it looked a little different than what mine does?
Yeah, I mean, well, you hit some of the big key points, that's for sure, and like building the trust and relationships. And like they're busy, right? So they're not necessarily going to read a ton of articles, but they can listen to a podcast while they're in the car, they're having lunch, they're going for a run, they're at the gym, whatever it may be. So it's super accessible by like thousands and millions of people, and especially with devices. And so the accessibility means that you can reach more people faster. And then also I find with, whether you're hosting or whether you're guesting, is that you're building your authority platform. And what I mean by that is people see you in a different light. So if you're sharing information and you're obviously intelligent with the questions that you ask and how you respond, Dan, and, sharing tidbits about your own business throughout the podcast, is that people will automatically see you as the go-to expert. And then that just builds trust that much faster. And if you can build trust that much faster, people will opt in and convert that much faster. But another really good point in regards to building your authority is that, if you're guesting and you're being on shows and you're doing your own shows, people just feel like, oh my God, you're everywhere. Like you're putting out content, and it's just like that instant awe factor. It's honestly almost similar, I think, to even having a book. They're just like, ooh, and it's like you almost have the ability to even like charge more for what you do, or it feels like you have more value with your business and you're at a higher level. And that speaks volumes, especially when it comes to the bottom line of your revenue each year, and it makes a huge impact.
Yeah, and I'd say like one of the other things I guess that popped to mind as you were talking, and I've had some really fantastic guests on over the years, and a lot of my mindset and the ideas that we then turn around and implemented into our business have come directly from guests on the podcast. And like to take it another step further, it's like if someone reaches out to me separately, I now have this very unique, somewhat randomized base of knowledge because, it's booking agents who are reaching out to me to get people on the show. It's referrals from one guest to another. And, when you're talking to an A player, who do they know, talk about, hang out with, and want their name associated with when given a referral?
Yep.
Probably another A player who has great ideas
exactly.
that I otherwise, I wouldn't, I'm not going to go on LinkedIn and start searching through posts to try to find this like certain quality. And so when I get people who have very, unique requests, so what should I do with this retirement account? The tax benefits such and such. Well, I'm not going to give them tax advice, but I remembered I'd had Jason DeBono on my show, and he really knew his stuff, and he's invested, millions upon tens of millions of dollars of IRAs or even hundreds. That's the guy. Hey, go listen to this episode. And now I have this tool, this like referral piece that's almost unique and custom built to the recommendation. And I can like email that over to somebody as like a beneficial tool, if that makes sense.
Totally. It's like you've got an extra Rolodex, and it serves people, right? I mean, people want to know people that know other people and have good connections and are a great resource on numerous levels. And the great thing about podcasts too is that it's content. You can leverage the heck out of it. I mean, obviously you're going to do a post on your website, or I would hope you would. And then obviously you're going to share out the podcast episode, but you can create like a video and it be on IGTV and be that right size. And you can break out little tiny quotes and tips from the podcast and put it out as, a video or audiogram or whatever you want to call it. But even like there's questions that get asked in a podcast that you can make into a social media post, or an engaging question to ask your audience, or even pulling out tips and quotes and make quote graphics out of them as extra social media. So that way you're not having to create more content. you've already got so much gold within one podcast episode that you can leverage it in so many different ways. And then obviously you're creating more organic traffic. And if you're SEOing the post, you can drive even more traffic to your website. So it's like the benefits are insane. Like there's so many.
Yeah, that really is intriguing. I'm like, man, I'm not doing very much of any of this stuff, and I'm wondering. Okay, so Lyndsay, you've got 11 people working for you with the agency. Is part of that podcasting agency doing some of this repurposing of content for clients, or is there somewhere that people could get that done as opposed to sitting down and having to spend 5-6 hours dissecting each episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually in the midst of redoing my website, but there's still information there. But we do podcast launches, obviously, and production and publishing and promoting and leveraging it. So some clients, again, they may have their own VA that kind of picks apart and creates, I call them snackable bites, but like little bite-sized pieces from your podcast. And I actually have one client where all of their content is based off of one podcast. Now, if you do your podcast live on Facebook in video, you can leverage it even further because you've got the video version, plus you're using Facebook, their algorithm. So there's different ways that, you can spin it. You can send out an email like you do, right, every week to share it with your list. It's amazing how many people don't email their list when a show goes live. And, making an article on LinkedIn, going to Bigger Pockets and using their, you can post the article in there as well. So there's lots of different places that you can make sure that your content is out there. And again, just kind of thinking of different ways to use the content, pull it apart, and pull out questions or pull out little quotes and yeah, I mean, you've got gold, you might as well use it.
Yeah, that's solid. That's solid stuff there. A lot of good tips for sure. So I'm going to go way back in time here. I forget if it was like 2012 or 2013. I was actually in the business that I'm in. A buyer's list is important for my company and for someone who does what I do. And I did not start an official buyer's list until like 2012, but I had been in the business 6 years. Managed to make, some money, keep some bills paid, go bankrupt in the middle of that. I wonder if I would have had, my stuff together, if that might have been avoidable. I actually didn't file bankruptcy. I just went to zero and lived at zero essentially for like a year or two as I started to kind of rebuild my life back then. But the point that I'm going to make is, I remember when I sent my first email out this is like the very first, I had put Facebook posts up, you put a picture on. Facebook was kind of new, 2008, 2007 for me, as it was for all of us. And I'd done that kind of putting content out there. But I remember I log into my MailChimp account and I put together this email, and maybe I had 15, 20, 25 emails of people that I knew who were like buying property. And I was like scared to send it off. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to be judged for this. This is like crazy.
Yeah,
and I sent that thing off. Yeah, I sent it off, and I get a phone call from one of the guys. I'm still in business with him today, Howard. And he's like, oh my God, I saw the email you sent, and the links looked a little weird, the color. I don't know, something was weird with them. Like, oh my God, this is horrible. And I've since, developed thicker skin, but I think that the takeaway for people, if you're not publishing some kind of content, presenting yourself as this authority, this expert, it's a lot easier after you put a bunch of it out there, because you sort of have this hesitation and fear that you're going to be judged or make a mistake in your content or some other kind of like mental procrastination barrier. If you had a client, or even better yet, a friend, Lyndsay, who was a real estate investor, and you knew they were like maybe did a deal or two, and, you talked about this content strategy with them, and if you recognize this hesitation, this fear, this procrastination, what kind of advice would you give that friend to kind of move past, and what suggestions or action items would you give that friend as a 1, 2, 3 step of what they should go do next tonight, so that they wake up tomorrow with some content?
That's a great question. And I remember I went through the exact same thing, and it's just that fear of putting yourself out there. I remember before I launched my podcast or did videos, I was scared crapless. But the thing that always gets me through, and like some days if I'm not wearing, makeup and I'm not done up and I'm like, oh, I got to do a video. But I'm like, I kind of get over it. It's like, whatever. But it's like, you just have to think about what is something that you wish you knew back then. And you have so much more knowledge in your head and so much more experience that someone that is just starting out or isn't at your level, that they would be screaming for some advice or help or tips. And I always think, like, if I don't have 1 million views on my video, like, I'm not going to cry. It's annoying, but whatever. But it's like, I just want to, even if, a handful of people were like, oh, that was super helpful, then I'm like, then I'm made in the shade. If you just think, if I can serve one person and share with them a tip of some kind or a resource or a life lesson or whatever, I think your fear would just kind of dissolve a little bit. And I think the second thing is that you can't go in with the expectation that you're going to be perfect. Like, you see some of the entrepreneurs that are online and on Facebook, and their videos and their pictures are like stunningly perfect. Don't try to measure up. They started somewhere, right? Like, they were in their kitchen with their computer and kids running around doing their thing. Everyone has to start somewhere, and that you have to know, like, the first few videos that you do, the first couple of podcasts that you do, like, they're kind of going to suck. Like, it's just going to happen. And it's okay. Like, you learn from it, right? And then you're like, you just get better as you go. Like, you just have to start somewhere or you're never going to progress and you're never going to get better.
Yeah, I know I'm not the greatest thing since sliced bread even to this day, but you could go back if you're listening to some of my first 2015 episodes, and like, I'm not even going to go back and listen to them because I'm sure they're horrible.
Oh, I know, right?
But what are you going to do, right? But yeah, it gets a lot more fun putting the content out there. And I think the cool thing is, because I do the podcast, because I put content out there, and I'm sure if there's someone listening who's like, what could I put out there? And I haven't put anything out there. This kind of seems a little far-fetched, but it's like better ideas seem to bubble up because I'm trying to bring my A game to the podcast when I put my content out there, right? And so it's like it almost forces you to have this like, hey, we're going to have to evolve our thought. We're going to have to do this a little better to be in the process of actually producing the content and putting something out there,
I know. And don't be afraid to like beg, borrow, and steal, right? Like if you have like certain thought leaders in your industry that you follow and you see their videos or blogs or topics and you're like, oh, that really resonates with me, you can do the same thing. You're obviously not going to copy what they have word for word, but it'll give you an idea of like, oh, I could touch upon that topic. And I find, too, if you go to YouTube for one of your industry leaders or competitors or whatever, because you can quite often see how many views that they've had for certain videos. And so you'll see which videos get the most hits. And so those topics obviously resonate with your ideal, like, client or person. So they would be naturally great topics to touch upon. So I find that little R&D piece is super helpful, just to kind of give you a leg up.
Gotcha. Now back to the friend example. Would you say to start with a certain format, right? Should they go on LinkedIn? Should they go on Facebook? Should they publish YouTube videos? Like, where would be the location that someone who just wanted to dip their toe in the water and try this, like, what's the right format for somebody getting started?
Well, for someone getting started, I always say there's 3 big questions that you need to ask yourself. One is you need to think about who you're addressing, right? Like, who are, like in those scenarios, okay, who are the best 3 contacts that you have that you've done deals with that were like less stress, way more ROI, because you are going to have clients that are a little bit more high maintenance than others. But think about like your top best ones that were so easy and you had great ROI and it just went smooth. And think about of all their characteristics, like what do they know? What are their age brackets? What kind of lifestyle do they have? What are their biggest pain points? What are they struggling with today? What are they wanting to solve right away? What do they love? Who do they follow? And even like literally write all that stuff down. It sounds painful, but once you do it, it's actually really eye-opening. And then that'll help you kind of drive the topics of what you would want to talk about. And then it's like, okay, what kind of content are you going to do and where? Then it's like you still need to do some of that R&D, like find out where that avatar is hanging out. Like if they're, not on TikTok, then you're not going to start a TikTok account because they don't even, their kids are on it, but that's it. If they're in LinkedIn all the time and they're really engaged, but they don't care about Facebook or they just don't have time for Facebook, then you know that LinkedIn is where it's at. And to go back into that R&D aspect, I mean, again, you can even check out the people that you follow or other thought leaders or competitors and kind of check out their platforms and see where they have the most connections, where do they get the most engagement. People are like commenting and liking and sharing. So that can be like give you some barometer. And then, what kind of content, you also need to know, again, part of their lifestyle, right? So, like, if your avatar, let's say, is like a man in his 70s, then you're probably not going to do a podcast because I doubt they're going to be listening to podcasts. Yes, that's probably a stereotypical thought, but you need to know, like, are they reading? Are they watching videos? Are they in YouTube all the time? Do they love podcasts and they're devouring them all the time? So you kind of need to know, like, how those people are learning, where they're going to access information so that you can invest your marketing dollars the right way in the right places.
Yeah, and I would even take it one step further. If it's not marketing dollars that you're investing there, even the creating of content and posting of content takes time, and so you don't want to invest the time in the wrong place and location. Yeah, exactly. Before the next question, can you define avatar? You've said it twice, I think, and just kind of fill in the holes there.
You betcha. So avatar is basically like a profile of your ideal prospect. Now, you guys may say like a joint venture partner or an investor or a buyer or a seller or whatever. So it's kind of, and some people in real estate investing, they deal with both buyers and sellers. So you have to kind of split them up, and you can't do the same marketing to buyers that you do to sellers. Like they're a different breed, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like your ideal client, and I'm using the word client broadly, but it's like their all-encompassing profile, how they feel, how they think, their lifestyle, where they're at, where they go to educate themselves, who do they follow, what are their mindsets, what are their problems, kind of all those things.
Yeah, so in a sense, my avatar that might be listening could be an investor, a private lender who funds my deals passively, and there might be another avatar who's listening right now that's a buyer who's going to put an offer in on one of my deals later this week, and maybe even a JV partner at some point, and a JV partner or an investor is going to be a really beneficial listener right now, like from my perspective, because we've built a little bit of trust. They've heard some of my ideas. They like the way I think. They've gotten a taste of me and thought enough to like reach out and call me, right? As opposed to the buyer might be like, still important, but they're probably going to be driven by the numbers on the deal, and she's probably going to call anyway later in the week. So not like ranking, but certainly when someone's selecting the avatar that they want to pick up the phone and call them based on their content, a lot of thought should go into that chunk of the strategy, right?
Yeah, you want to speak to them and them like read or listen to your stuff and be like, oh yeah, I totally had that issue. Oh, I can totally relate. I feel like they're speaking to me. Oh yeah, like even for this podcast, like, yeah, I was kind of wondering, like, should I start a podcast? I don't know. And so maybe, me talking throughout this episode enlightens them and be like, okay, I do need to do that, or I don't because of this reason or that reason. So it's like you're solving a problem, but they also feel like that you're listening to them and that you understand them.
Makes sense. So talk a little bit about your real estate investor marketing agency. Can you describe some of the services and things you've done for investors in that component of your business?
Yeah, you bet. So many of them some of them have podcasts. So of course I have, produced and promoted their podcasts and increased their listeners, and yeah, they get a ton of business through their podcast. Some of them will have like webinars and funnels and lead magnets that we've created, and, put out their social media and their emails and their sales funnels, to their list. I do have a done for you service where it's basically swipe and deploy. So it's, there's blogs and nurture emails and video scripts and social media and images, and all you have to do is brand it and maybe tweak it to your voice and then deploy it. Or we have done for you service where it's, we take your branding and we pre-schedule it and do it all for you. And then, of course, if you want to launch your own podcast or if you want to guest on podcasts, then we help with the publishing and the promoting and optimizing and tracking and all that good stuff.
Nice. And what would be the goal for those clients? Who are they trying to have reach out for them? Are they talking to sellers in that instance for deal flow? Are they talking to JV partners? Can you give me an example of a couple of the avatars that the clients are actually seeking in those examples?
Yeah, I have a couple. Some of them are like educators. They have courses, masterminds. They're like educators within, real estate investing and notes and so forth. I have a couple that we do content for. That one is involved in like getting joint venture and backers for RV parks, actually. Another one that we just actually created his website a couple of months ago. His avatar is actually pilots because he is a pilot and he does real estate investing and he wants to help other pilots, make more of their 401ks. He's working on the CARES Act right now and has a lead magnet to get more contacts, and he helps them with like joint venture wholesaling. I can't remember what else, to be honest. But yeah, like everyone needs to market no matter who you're attracting. You still need to showcase your authority. And you really, it's like doing content is like an education tool to build trust in your authority. No matter whether you're a wholesaler or you're doing multifamily, that's what he's doing, multifamily. RV parks. I mean, there's so many options out there, and some investors dabble in a few of them at the same time.
Yeah. I know. I'll point out or I'll highlight a lot of the guests who have been on the REI Diamond Show over the years. RV, mobile home parks, multifamily investors. One of the requirements is for those businesses, a lot of the ones who own 4,500 units, 1,000 units, to 2,800 units, these like large scaled up investors. One of the biggest barriers to entry for most people is a large amount of capital to actually take down the deal in the first place. And really, that's the thing that stops somebody from being taken seriously when you go to a broker in Texas or a broker in Kansas City or wherever. Yeah, I'm going to buy this $6 million deal. And the guy's like, well, do you have, the $2 million for the down payment? And you're like, well, no, I'm going to raise it. But then that same broker goes online, they Google, oh, this is, John Smith, and they find his online presence with podcast guests and, a bunch of episodes there. And he's got this blog set up and he's got all this content published. And now that broker likely doesn't say, hey, send me over a proof of fund statement in the bank. He probably doesn't ask for that. He takes at face value everything that's online.
So true.
One of the ways for somebody who's investing in real estate, maybe at, residential single family thing, and you kind of are putting it together and you might not have the resources quite yet to, step up and scale up into larger asset classes. But the content marketing strategy, just like I've done with the REI Diamond Show, although I haven't, ventured in the direction of those larger assets, my business grew in a different direction. But part of, that strategy could be breaking the barrier to entry to get to the next level that a lot of people dream about when they're flipping houses and owning rental properties.
That's a huge point, and that's exactly what this one client did. He's like, I need a better presence, and his website is gorgeous. And it's funny because at first he was like, oh, I don't want to share that I'm a pilot, and I don't want to, like, I just want to, attract investors and, work with multifamily properties and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, are you kidding? I'm like, they're your perfect avatar. You can speak to them. And so his website is like so freaking cool. And like just the stuff that he's doing and the lead magnets that he's got, like people are standing at attention now and like they're watching his videos like crazy. And he's just getting such a bigger following and is being looked at differently. And like you said, your opportunities that knock at your door are that much more, like they're higher. You can scale up and grow faster for sure.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me sometimes, like when I'm approving or not approving a guest, obviously one of the first things I do is I go inspect their online presence. And if I have somebody who's been on a bunch of podcasts, great. That's a good start. I can check a podcast out as I'm prepping for our session or our episode here. I can check the website. And, I'm embarrassed to say I've had to turn down, these quote unquote potential guests because I didn't believe they had anything valuable to share after a glance at their Wix website, right?
Wix. Yeah. Friggin' Wix.
Yeah. Gotta love it. That's cool. And one of the things you touched on that I had written down to discuss, and I was going to say, hey, Lyndsay, can you define authority marketing or what it means to be an authority? Would you just mind touching on it again, maybe taking it apart just a little further? I think it's such an abstract, difficult concept to measure ROI on how much authority I have that nobody really puts the effort and attention into it and acknowledges it. Initially, once you recognize the power of it and you start to do a lot of the things we've already talked about in this episode, it's automatic and we understand it and we've felt it, but we haven't felt it in a measurable manner. So would you mind kind of shedding some additional light on authority branding?
And I think honestly the easiest way to explain it is comparatively. Like if you're on someone's website and you see that they've written a book, they have a podcast, they've spoken at events, and then you go to someone else's website and they've got services and they've got things you can buy and they've got a blog, which business kind of like perks your ears and go, damn, they must know their stuff. And so naturally, those that speak and, have a book or a podcast or have been a guest expert, and that's the key phrase, right? You're a guest expert. People are booking you to speak on their podcast show to share your wisdom. And so people naturally, they are like, it's not like, can I please see your resume? Like, what university did you go to? What certificates do you have? It's like, it's just not that way anymore. Like the entrepreneurial space is just so different. So that really is almost like your resume or your CSV, and like it showcases what you know and that you're sought after. And if you're sought after and people are going to you for advice or for information or as a resource, people automatically go towards you more, and you also get more opportunities to speak at other events and to showcase your expertise. And honestly, if you had, and let's just take it out of the REI space, but if you're an educator or a coach and you have a site where you don't have a blog or you're not on a podcast show or you don't have a book or none of those things, and yet you want to charge, X amount per month for your coaching program, you're like, really? Like it's just not going to showcase well. Do you know what I mean? And honestly, like even like when you're buying a car and you go buy a little like rickety like used car lot, like those cars might be fantastic. And then you go to like a really shiny, nice, pretty like car lot where there's like beautiful signs and everything's branded. And it just makes you stand up and be like, yeah, I'm going to go to that one. It's like that instant trust.
Yeah, and like, you know, I guess two examples. One that used to be probably a little more relevant than it is today. It may actually still be relevant, but you know, you take the person who shows up in the business suit, and then you take the person who shows up in jeans and sneakers, or even, you know, even better, they came in like running shorts and sneakers, and it's like one person just looks more professional and business-like, and
yeah,
you know what I mean? And then if we take that even further, it's like, well, which one would you want to do business with? Well, the person in the suit and tie just looks easily, you know, regardless of whether one was, you know, a total stooge that we dressed up that way to prove our point, you would probably still gravitate toward the one dressed that way. And another example would be, most of us in real estate, we're used to having to like sell, right? Or, you know, in your example with the coaching programs, there's certainly a moment where there's sales going on and there's overcoming objections. And it's the same thing that, you know, salespeople do everywhere. But let's take that concept of the person who's trying to influence the other party, right? The salesperson is trying to influence the seller or the buyer to get the deal done. And we take that same, we're going to influence the other person, but we take it into the doctor's office where the doctor comes in with a white coat on and we're in the doctor's office. So you know, the patient has come to this location and maybe there was a blood test or maybe there wasn't a blood test. And that doctor is going to influence the patient to maybe change behavior or maybe take the prescription or take this course of treatment or whatever the action is. But you can imagine most of us have been in this situation. That is not a hard sell. This doctor has not studied the technique and psychology of persuasive influence, right? This is not what the doctor's done, but our culture has placed this certain identity, authority shroud, if you will, in the doctor showing up in a lab coat that we don't go check to see if that doctor actually went to med school. We don't check for his or her scores before we roll through with the treatment. We don't even probably check on, we don't even check even the reviews a lot of times. I don't know if you've ever tried to select a new doctor in a new city, but there's not great, you know, there's not a lot of great podcast information and things of that nature. You have no info really to go on, except for some very clunky sites. And yet when we're in that scenario and we showed up with the doctor, even who we met the first time, we're very easily influenced by the authority position that doctor has. So how do we create that?
And what media is on online. Like if that doctor had a book and was on like CBC once a week or, you know, was featured on TV, or you automatically have value in them. So like having a book.
Even higher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If the doctor took the time to, you know, Dr. Oz is going to have more influence than perhaps a much more qualified, skilled. Exactly. So cool. Hey, are there any book recommendations that might be very pertinent to kind of fill in a lot of the topics that we discussed on this episode today, or maybe just other book recommendations that you make often, Lyndsay?
Yeah, actually, I've been working with a book called Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller. He's the guy that does like building a story brand. And so I actually went through the exercises in the book with one of my clients building a website, and I'm actually applying it to my own website that I'm changing. And it really makes you look at that whole avatar, what it is that what your solution is, the pain of disconnect if they don't buy from you. Like, it just makes you look at your avatar differently and makes you look at the text that you're putting on your website differently and what your solutions are. And it was just really definitive. So for those real estate investors that want to up-level and scale and have a really professional website that's going to attract their avatar and start building, you know, content, definitely recommend that book to start.
Nice. So if you could go back and share the crown jewel of wisdom with yourself, I don't know, when you were just starting in the content world, maybe the moment that you said, you know what, we're focused on content from here on out, what would be the crown jewel of wisdom that you would share with yourself at that moment?
I'm thankful that I don't have a lot of regret. I'm very much the type of person that I take action anyways, even if I'm scared. But I would definitely say I wish I could have listened to my inner intuition a little bit better. Said no to things that maybe I shouldn't have said yes to, or, accept opportunities when I didn't. I should have just listened to my intuition.
Nice. I like it. So how can listeners get more information about you or any one of the marketing and content businesses that we discussed during the episode?
Yeah, they can go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com, and I'm actually happy to give away 2 weeks worth of free content. If they go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com/diamond, they can get 2 weeks worth of blogs and social and emails and use it at their leisure.
Sweet. Not only did you get a lot of good ideas here today for listening into the show, you have that gift as well. So thank you, Lyndsay.
You betcha.
Well, cool. We have reached the top of our episode. I appreciate you coming on the show. I do have pages full of notes here. I had a great time recording, and I thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of the REI Diamond Show. Remember to review and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app. Just search REI Diamonds and click subscribe. You can also sign up to receive new episode notification emails at reidiamonds.com, as well as check out the 169 episode archive of Wealth Building Real Estate Investment Jewels of Wisdom. I've made millions of dollars by using the wisdom shared by guests on the show over the past few years, and those are recorded and available for you to check out in their entirety at reidiamonds.com. So my main business is buying and selling single-family houses, 223 bought and sold in 2019, 231 bought and sold so far in 2020, and we currently have another 133 houses in our inventory, either under construction, for sale, or sold and awaiting closing. And here are 3 ways that you and I can do business. Number 1, if you buy houses in Atlanta, Chicago, or the Philadelphia region, go to dealswithroi.com and sign up for the correct buyers list. There are 5 lists in total, separated by region. Number 2, if you are an accredited investor and you'd like to fund a deal passively of mine or many deals, go to fundrehabdeals.com and sign up to receive private mortgage investment opportunity emails. And number 3, if you have a deal for sale in either Atlanta, Chicago, or the Philadelphia region, please send me an email with the details. Need funding for your real estate business? Interested in a line of credit with a rate as low as 6.49%, or hard money loans, or even portfolio rental loans? Visit www.reilineofcredit.com. You'll even receive a free iPad when you close on your first loan. reilineofcredit.com. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Mailing lists are the engine to any off-market deal machine. And the Deal Machine founder, David Lecko, joins us here next time to discuss just that. Mailing lists, CRMs, and how to scale up your driving for dollars business. Until then, my friend, keep closing deals.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Diamonds Show with Dan Breslin. To receive email notifications of new weekly episodes, sign up at www.reidiamonds.com.